everyone, it's Nina and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a book haul because I have not done one in a while, and these are basically all of the books I've gotten since the start of the year. I did get a lot of books for Christmas that I made a YouTube short for, which I'll try and link here if that's a thing that I can do, but I did get some other books. One of my goals this year was to be really selective about the books that I bring into my home, both from the library that I'm just checking out as well as from stores. And I set a goal of only buying one book for every 5 that I read. So as of today, I have read 23 books, which means I have 4 slots that were allotted to buying books. So I do have those 4 books. And I also have some pre-orders that I made in 2022 that have finally come out that I'm not really counting in this category. I also have one more book I got for Christmas that I didn't have when I made that short, so I'm including that here as well. And then I also have a couple other books that I got from the thrift store. I guess this is technically breaking my own rule because they are books I bought, but since I'm buying these books for so much cheaper than a regular full price book, I kind of consider it the same as checking out a book from the library, because most likely if I don't 100% love these books, I don't really feel like I've wasted a lot of money on them, and I'm just going to re-donate them to the library or to a little free library in my area. Am I breaking my own rules? I don't know, maybe a little bit, but at the same time, I'm the one that made those rules, so I feel like I should be able to change them as I see fit. At the same time, all these books are ones I have a lot of interest in and I plan on reading sometime this year. Or I've had them on my TBR for a while, but just have been waiting to buy a physical copy. So I do feel like in the end, it's all completely justified. So with that long intro out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the books I got. I'm going to start off with the pre-order books that I have, which are all Danmei novels. The first book I have here is the second volume of Husky and His White Cat Shizun by Meatbun Who Doesn't Eat Meat. This book I have started reading. I'm a little over halfway through, and I'm hoping to finish it later this month. I read the first one in January and really enjoyed it and knew I wanted to continue on with the series, so I went ahead and pre-ordered the second volume. I think the third volume is slated to come out sometime later this year, so I'll probably also pre-order that as well. And I also really in particular love this cover. If it will focus on it, I can show you what it looks like. But yeah, I just love the design of this one with Chuaning in the background and then the disciples in the front. I think the overall design and color scheme is really nice for this one. The next book I have here is the first volume of a new Danmei series I'm going to be starting, and that is 1,000 Autumns by Meng Xiexi. To give a description of this book, I think I'm just going to read the blurb because I feel like it makes the most sense. In this historical tale, a Taoist martial artist must begin a journey of healing and self-reflection as he resists the temptations of a powerful leader of a demonic sect. I've actually heard this book is a little less focused on romance than other Danmei series, and a lot about it is more about Chen Qiao's personal growth, which, to be honest, I am not appalled by. To give myself a little bit of a tester for this series, I did watch the first episode of the animated adaptation, and I really liked Shen Qiao in that as the main character, so I'm excited to see the original novel and see kind of how his relationship develops with his love interest, and also his personal growth, because I think he seems like a really interesting character, and I'd love to learn more about him. And the last Danmei novel I had pre-ordered that finally came in was the 4th volume of Grandmaster Demonic Cultivation by MXTX. I think I talked about this in another vlog, but this book was kind of stuck in like pre-order limbo at Right Stuff. I had pre-ordered this alongside the 5th and final volume in the series, which is not coming out until May, and I think because of the timing of when I ordered it, they kind of got lumped together and I thought I was going to have to wait until May to read this volume, but luckily it ended up shipping when my pre-order for 1,000 Autumns came out, so I'm glad I don't have to wait much longer to continue reading this series. So now let's look at the 4 books that I had designated as my allowed purchases. The first one of those was Mysteries of Thorn Manor by Margaret Rogerson. This is kind of like a 1.5 novella that came out after Sorcery of Thorns. And it's mostly just like a fluffy, character-focused story about the main trio. It's very cute and basically exactly what I wanted from reading Sorcery of Thorns. And similarly, the art on this book is super beautiful. This same artist does a lot of YA fantasy books, but she's also done all of Margaret Rogerson's book covers, and I really like this cover with Nathaniel and Elizabeth on the front of it. Another book I got actually on the same trip when I got the Mysteries of Thorn Manor is Clariel by Garth Nix. This is the 4th book in the Old Kingdom series, but it's also like a prequel to the original 3. So I think you technically could read this out of order, but I am planning on reading it before I continue on with the later books in the series. I remember reading a sample of this back when it first came out in like 2014, but then I just ended up not picking it up and finishing the rest of the series. I'm super excited to have this since it matches my copy of the 5th book in the series. even though the other ones I have are mass market paperback, so collectively the series will not ever match. And unfortunately, this cover design does not match the original 3 either. I wish they had continued and done the illustrated covers, but these ones are also still perfectly nice. The other designated book I ended up getting full price was one that is a little bit maybe out of my comfort zone, and that is Unseelie by Evelise Houseman. This is a YA fae story that I think is going to be a duology or a series. This is also a debut author and seems like someone I would like to support. It's also not a fae romance, it's mostly about the bond between two sisters. And one of the sisters is also female autistic rep, and I believe the author is autistic as well. So it just kind of seemed like a book that I would be interested in and wanted to support the author. I was planning on reading this last month, but I just kind of ran out of time for a lot of the books I was reading, but I'm hopefully going to be able to read this sometime in April. And the last of my 3 allotted books is an absolute chonker, and that is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. I read Piranesi by Susanna Clarke and really enjoyed it. I think she's got a great writing style, and this book is kind of like her magnum opus. I think there's also a live-action BBC adaptation of the story, and the main reason why I wanted to get this book was because I know since it's so long, I feel like I wouldn't be able to finish it in my allotted time from the library. It has a lot of tropes that I really enjoy. Apparently one of my niches in fantasy stories is ones that involve dueling magicians also set in Victorian or Edwardian England, and I believe this book has both those things. This book is a chonker. I think there's editions of it that have it as set as over 1,000 pages, but this particular paperback one only has it as 800. So, a little bit more manageable, but at the same time it's a very rich and intense world that'll have to have a lot of brain power to digest. Okay, now let's move on to the extra books that I got. The first one was a Christmas gift, and this was actually given to me by Val. This is Dead Collections by Isaac Fellman. This is an adult queer magical realism horror, I think that involves vampires. I really like this cover design. I'm pretty sure this artist also did Hell Followed With Us, which is also a queer horror novel written by a trans male author. So happy this cover artist likes staying on brand. It was not a book that was on my radar, but at the same time seems really interesting and very much up my alley. So hopefully I'll be able to carve out some time in the near future to read this as well. This next book is one I got from my library's bookshop for $2, and it is The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. This book is one that looks pretty manageable, but it's deceptively dense. It feels like I could really do some damage if I smack someone over the head with it. But I knew I was going to buy this book eventually. I mean, I love The Secret History so much, and I think for a long time this book was even more well-known than The Secret History. And I knew I was eventually going to buy this. I actually had been considering getting the paperback version at a couple different bookstores. But in the end, when I saw this for $2, I figured it was meant to be. I might as well, take a risk and get it then. The next book is one I got from my local thrift store, and that is Young Mungo by Douglas Stewart. This one was on my radar to get out from the library, but then when I walked in, I literally, my body acted on instinct, and I just, grabbed it off of the shelf when I saw it at my thrift store. Especially since this book just came out in 2022. So I was not expecting to find a nice, hardback version of it there. This book is definitely quite out of my comfort zone, and I didn't know a ton about it going into it. I believe this author won the Booker Prize in, 2020 for another book, but a lot of people have said this book is very sad, and some have even compared it to A Little Life, which I'm a little, scared of in some ways, because A Little Life is not type of book that I like to read, but at the same time I figured since I already own this one, I might as well give it a shot. But if I don't like it, I can easily donate it back and someone else can get a chance at getting a really nice edition of this book. Okay, the last set of 3 books is ones that I'm so incredibly excited about. I've been looking for one of these books to try and read after I watched the movie adaptations of them, and I could not have lucked out better when I found this at my local thrift store. This box set of the 3 books in the Hunger Games trilogy. Oh my gosh, I am so excited. I actually just watched the Hunger Games movies for the very first time in January. They had been a series my wife had read and also enjoyed the movie versions of in the past. And randomly I was like, do you want to try and watch the movies? I ended up renting the movies from our local library. And I thought the first one was okay. But then, of course, watching Catching Fire, I was like, this is one of the best movies made of all time. Don't change my mind, it's so good. So I was hoping to at least find a copy of Catching Fire at some point at my local thrift store. I talked about this before, but my thrift store is one that doesn't have a very large YA, secondhand book selection, but I will occasionally see, a divergence there. So I figured it being a slightly older YA dystopian series, it would be a likely candidate to show up at my thrift store. And I was lucky because I was talking to the manager there who said she had just put this out, a couple minutes before I walked in. So I'm really lucky that I was able to snag it to be able to read all of these books. I'd love to do maybe in, August or September a reading vlog reading all 3 of these books. especially since the movie adaptation of the prequel book is coming out in November. And I think it would be fun to have that experience of reading these books for the first time. And I will probably do like an elaborate tabbing system for each of the books to match the covers. I guess to show you what each of the books looks like individually, we have The Hunger Games, and then we have Catching Fire, and last but not least, we have Mockingjay. So I feel so happy and lucky that I was able to pick up this series. But that's going to be enough of me gushing about the Hunger Games trilogy for a little bit. Those were the last books that I recently hauled, so that is going to be it for this video. I'm going to still try and stick to my goal of only buying one book for every 5, so it might be a little while before I have another book haul on this channel. But in the meantime, I definitely will have plenty of other book-related content and reading vlogs coming out in the near future. But thank you guys so much for watching. Please consider liking this video or subscribing if you aren't already. Consider following me on the Storygraph if you'd like to see my reading updates in real time. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!